So Neuroflight. I'm going to guess that you heard about Neuroflight through Drone Mesh's video. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody else is really covering it except him. If they are, I'd certainly like to know. So Neuroflight, I'm so torn about this because obviously he has hit upon a real, people are so interested in it. They're so interested in it, and I want to cover it, but it's so preliminary right now. Like, in order to even get it onto a flight controller, you kind of have to be a little bit of a programmer. There's not even like just a flash this hex to your flight controller and go. You have to set up the tensor environment and train the, I don't know. So it feels to me, number one, like it's just so preliminary. But then number two, it's not even like a given that it flies good or better than a well-tuned. I think it probably flies worse than a well-tuned or even a badly tuned PID controller. It's just like, and it may always be that true. It's not always a given that machine learning is going to do better than hand tuning. So let me ask you this. Let me flip it around on you. What do you think is exciting or interesting about Neuroflight?
I believe if the artificial intelligence can, if it ends up working properly, I kind of believe like now we're not worried about tinkering. Hey, where are we getting these mid-throttle oscillations? You know, this thing is gonna, if it works properly, it should just correct all that stuff for us. I mean, to make it like dummy-proof almost.
So I think it's going to largely depend on how the model is designed. You know, it's only going to be as good as how we design the model.
Well, we're attacking it from the other end. We're looking for a desired behavior versus tuning it. You know what I'm saying? It's coming out at a slightly different end.
That's really interesting, and I'm really glad I asked you guys this because that's a perspective that I didn't have until this minute, that you guys are interested. I got to tell you, my first thought was that people just heard AI and went, AI, oh, it's so good. Yes, tell us. But that's your perspective actually makes a lot of sense, that the goal should be to identify the desired flight outputs and let the AI to handle the problem solving, as opposed to having coders having to handle the problem solving. Is that right?
Well, that and look at your Project Mockingbird video. You were saying you were going over to some of the values, and you're like, I don't know why the heck they're doing this, but then you flew it and you got it. So AI may come, or neural networks may come through a different method, which isn't obvious to us, to get the desired behavior.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There's a lot of knobs being twiddled.
It's just brute forcing whatever could possibly be through the random. I'm guessing they're using random forest TensorFlow, so they're just basically brute forcing the best possible settings. Trying way more things than we would ever try.
It's interesting. It makes me think of a demonstration I saw where they gave an artificial intelligence, a machine learning network, a model of like a human body, and said, figure out how to walk. And it didn't come up with like put one foot in front of the other. Like in one case, it kind of slithered like a snake, and it came up with all these different ways of moving that were very unusual to humans. And I think that's what you guys are talking about, that the machine learning can come up with smarter ways of solving these problems.
Or just different.
Yeah, different ways of solving.
Or to keep us from crashing.
Yeah.
I did see on Drone Mesh, he was talking about actually there's some way to train your AI. I don't know, you guys seem like you're a little more intellectual with this stuff than I am, but how does all that work? I mean, is that how AI works? You just train it, or do you allow it to train itself?
For the record, I'm faking it, but with knowledge. But yes, they train them, and it's, with given inputs, what's the output, and that's how it supposedly learns. That's my rudimentary understanding of it.
Yeah, I also have a rudimentary understanding of AI, but anytime you do machine learning, you have to tell the computer when it's done something right and when it's done something wrong, and then through various methods it tries to improve the times when it does something right. And then you hope that it will come up with, sometimes they use what's called genetic algorithms, where the computer will try different things, and the ones that are successful will sort of breed into the future generation. There's all kinds of different algorithms for figuring out different ways to try to do it right. But the gist of it is you have to train it and tell it when it's done something right versus when it's done something wrong. Does anybody know about like Tensor and they've got like a virtual environment where you can train the AI with like a simulated quad? Does anybody know any more about that? Like, how does that work? How does it know whether it's done something right or wrong?
I do not.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about this one particular project. I've done some just, like Hello World type stuff with TensorFlow, and I've watched a lot of videos on it. So
yeah,
I mean, it's pretty much you just tell it what your desired, like you was saying, I forgot who was saying just a minute ago, you tell it what the desired output is, and it just keeps trying things until it gets closer and closer to that desired output. And then all the different things that are the variables, it weights all those, and it kind of develops a bias towards what things seem to help or what things seem to hurt.
Yeah.
That's my gathering
So-
of what I
So with that being said, does that mean like you could tell it once it senses like oscillations or something that it's not supposed to do that? You know what I mean? Will it be able to sense?
You tell it
stuff
the
like
goal
that?
is tell it the goal is no oscillation, and reward it when there's no oscillation.
It seems like the simplest thing you could do is you could use a set point logic, similar to the way a PID controller works, but you could say, look, when I deflect the stick this much, here are my rates, and my target angular rate is X degrees per second. And then read the gyro, and if it is not X degrees per second, then you need to do better. I mean, that's the simplest thing you could do. And anything you can think about that a quad does that is bad can probably be summed up as the gyro is not matching the targeted rate.
Sounds like we need to get a noob involved here. Isn't he a pretty darn good programmer?
A noob? Yeah, I think he is.
Wasn't he writing his own? Wasn't he trying to write his own PID loop or something? PID controller?
I wouldn't be surprised to hear that. He always has a zillion crazy projects he's working on. The thing is, I looked at the wiki and I thought, oh, should I do a video where I try this out? But like the things in the wiki, it looked like you needed to have a development environment set up, and there were various like change this in the target.h file, and it really seemed like a developer level project. It didn't seem like you had to be like writing code, but like you had to be able to like compile code and modify make files and includes in order to even get it running. So it just doesn't seem like it's packaged yet for, and as much as I pretend to be technologically apt, I am really not at that level as a developer. I might muddle through it with help, but
Yeah, I watched Drone Mesh's videos, all of them on it, actually, the 3 or 4 he's made so far, but it is pretty intense. Like, you do have to write some stuff yourself, actually.
Right.
And download some stuff from certain websites and
yeah.
whatnot.
Has he actually gone through setting it up and running it on one of his own quads?
Yes, he has. He's actually in the process right now of training the AI.
Oh, that's exciting.
He's going over doing all that.
That's very interesting. I have to look into that. I hadn't seen any of his recent videos about it. So I think it's kind of cool, but I think it's still really premature. And the other thing is that, as exciting as machine learning is, I think a lot of times people overestimate its ability. Like we look at I don't know, Google and go, wow, Google, AI, so smart. But a lot of times machine learning is not the best solution to every problem. And especially very...
Yeah, look at Terminator Judgment Day.
Yeah, especially very complicated problems, like if you think about things like prop wash oscillation, it may be that that's just such a sort of dynamic problem that it'll be very difficult for like a machine learning algorithm. Because how are you going to train a machine learning algorithm to deal with prop wash oscillation? I don't think you can simulate prop wash oscillation accurately enough to do it in the computer. So you're going to need to fly it and have it figure it out, and that's going to be, I think, really tricky.
I think that's one reason they're looking. Go ahead.
Well, couldn't you use like? Sorry to interrupt. Couldn't you use like a black box log where you can actually see oscillation?
Maybe, but the thing that the AI needs to do is look at respond to actual behavior and see the result, and then go, oh, that worked or that didn't work. So you could feed it a black box log and say, here's your gyro data, but then it needs to try to respond to that and see the result. And you can either do that with an accurate simulation, where you go, okay, you did X and Y happened, but accurately simulating prop wash oscillation is, I think, going to be really difficult. So you would need to let
What about black box logs from Neuroflight, though, where it's actually trying to make those things? You know, it's trying to make those decisions and recording all those decisions.
Sure, I could see that. You know, you could take the learning done on one quadcopter and feed it into another, and that's another thing. I mean, if it learns that something works on a given quadcopter, will that translate? I mean, these are all things that the coders are trying very hard to deal with. And this may be a case where a finely tuned, human-tuned PID controller does a better job than a machine learning algorithm that kind of throws everything at the wall. I don't know. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. The proof of the pudding is in the flying. So, I'll be really interested to see what kind of results he gets.
If you're training in a simulator, it's only going to be as good as the simulator, though.
Exactly.
And if you're training in real life, that's going to take a lot of batteries, because, I mean, AI training takes several thousand iterations to really get good.
Yeah.
So I think the bar is high for that.
Just need to set up a little closed circuit thing where drones can recharge their own batteries and just infinitely go in circles testing over and over again.
Well, this reminds me of what the University of Philadelphia guys were doing when the Rotorite guys went there, where they're flying drones. They're having the computer fly drones inside a room with motion tracking set up, and the computer gets better and better at flying them. They're still using a PID controller, but the computer is learning how to fly the drone. It's tricky. It's interesting. I'll be curious to see how long it takes to get a good enough data set to get a quad flying well, and I think it's going to be really challenging. But here's the thing. Here's the other interesting.
Have to factor in.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Josh. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Have to factor in environmental factors like wind and that kind of thing.
Yeah. The thing is, if machine learning does produce some novel solution to a problem like prop wash, I mean, if we have black box of that, we could certainly also look at it and go, oh, that's really smart. Let's put that in a PID controller. You know? It's not like we have to pick and choose just one. But I think the other thing I've heard because I've asked some people who seem smarter than me what they think of this, and some of them have said that just the processing power required to really make this work is going to be really limited, even on an F7. That you would like to have more processing power and more memory to really make this effective. So.